Well, fellas, a couple of years ago, after being stuck in dev hell for quite some time, Wargaming released a ship that, in my opinion, was a gimmick too far, shall we say. It's one of the most gimmicky ships in game, even still today, 2 years later, which is really saying a lot, especially when it comes to its consumables. And that ship is the Tier 10 Soviet large cruiser, the Sevastopol. Now, the ship itself is actually fairly intriguing. You see, this is the original Kronstadt design. So the Kronstadt in-game is what this design evolved into. You see, the Soviets and the Germans were colluding together to build this ship. The Soviets were going to produce the hull, and they were going to buy the guns and turrets from the Germans. They were extra Bismarck turrets and guns. So this is what the Soviets intended to build. However, with the whole, World War II thing kicking off and Mustache Man going back on Stalin after they double-teamed Poland, the deal obviously was off. So the Soviets settled on the Kronstadt design with her, 305, 310 millimeter guns instead of the 15-inch, 380 millimeter guns of the Bismarck. So this is what we were supposed to get, or the Soviets were supposed to get, and we got it in game a couple of years ago. However, Wargaming decided to take a very unique approach, shall we say, to the consumables of the Sevastopol. So the Sevastopol is the same hull as the Kronstadt, but it's a tier higher, you see. Then they went and they shaved 10,000 HP off of the Kronstadt HP, which is not ideal, because you see, the Kronstadt hull is not exactly in the same boat as the Stalingrad hull. The Kronstadt being the Tier 9 Soviet large cruiser, the Stalingrad being the Tier 10 Soviet large cruiser. The Stalingrad has really good armor, you see, and that, along with its large HP pool, is what kept it afloat at Tier 10. The Kronstadt had decent armor, but a very large HP pool for a Tier 9 cruiser, even, a Tier 9 large cruiser. But you shave 10,000 of that off, and then put it into Tier 10 matchmaking. That's not exactly a tough haul, you see. However, again, going back to the consumables, Wargaming gave this thing something that I think her and only the Lushan still have today, and that is heavy repair teams. You see, heavy repair teams are kind of similar to the specialized repair teams that you'll find on Minotaur, Goliath, and the Conqueror, right? They are a repair team that can regenerate a large amount of HP, but it takes some time. When the ship was released, it took 90 seconds for the heal to fully heal the ship, or at least heal, what it would heal on the ship. Which, that's a minute and 30 seconds, fellas. That is a very long time to get your HP back. So it was a very, very, very low percentage of the HP pool that you were returning every second. And that sounded neat and all. And then on top of that, she got the Soviet damage con, the fast damage con, where it's active for a very short time, but it cools down incredibly fast as well, unlike, of course, the other standard damage cons throughout the game that take, like a minute and change in some cases to come back. The fast damage con does not. So, okay, that's pretty gimmicky right there, but it doesn't stop there, fellas. Then she has a special engine boost consumable. You get a 20% boost to the top speed, which is very similar to like the French cruiser engine boost, but it only lasts 45 seconds. Which isn't long. I mean, the French engine boost lasts for, way longer than that, right? A couple of minutes in some cases, especially if you, build into it. So it's like an emergency engine boost a la the small one, where you get, a bit of a boost for a small time set. Granted, it does also cool down in 60 seconds, so it does cool down faster than the French cruiser boost. The only normal consumable on this thing was hydroacoustic search. It has a 5-kilometer range and a fairly typical runtime. So it's like, oh, okay, everything else about this ship is kooky. The hull, the amount of HP, the big guns that it has at Tier 10, and all the consumables except for hydroacoustic search. So Yeah, while that sounds interesting on paper, in reality, it didn't really work out that well, in my humble opinion. Now, the way that the Sevastopol was, at least the way I saw a lot of the arguments in the comments section saying, was meant to be played is that, it's an ambush cruiser. It has a low detectability, which it does, and you use your, large 15-inch guns at tier 10 on a cruiser. Those are ridiculously big guns to have on a cruiser. There's no doubt about that. You pop up, you blop a broadside, you go dark, and you run away. And if you get damaged to the point of where you need to heal up, you go dark, you heal up, wait a minute and 30 seconds, and then you get back in on the action. Which, I mean, yeah, if that's how you could reliably play the Sevastopol every single game, yeah, sure, that could definitely work. Except, of course, as I'm sure most of you guys are aware, that's not really how the game works. There's plenty of matches where, like we were talking about in yesterday's video, your destroyers are dead by the 5-minute mark, and now you're just being perma-spotted by whomever because your DDs are dead, the enemy DDs are spotting you, and yeah, you have an 11-kilometer detection range, but, most tier 10 DDs have, a 6-kilometer detection range, if that? So they can definitely outspot you, and you only have hydroacoustic search, no radar, so they can just sit there and spot you, and you can get farmed down by the enemy team, and your heavy repair teams, they don't regenerate enough HP per second for you to, brute force your way through the damage that you're taking. So they can't outpace the damage you have coming in, so it's just not really worth it. Another thing about the heavy repair teams too is that you're so not skeptical, you're so hesitant to use it because you obviously want to get the most out of it, especially beforehand when it had a very, very long cooldown time. So you don't want to pop it too early, which means you have to wait until you're darn near dead to use it, because again, it regenerates a similar amount of HP to Minotaur's heal. I mean, think about how much health the Minotaur can print back, right? It regenerates that same amount of HP, so you don't want to pop it too soon. So you got to get down to the last 30% of the Sevastopol's HP before you pop it. And then, of course, you have again, before the buffs, you had a 2-minute cooldown time on the heal, which meant that, well, you were very hesitant to get back in there because now you don't have the heal. So it just didn't work out for me on the heal alone. The engine boost was kind of what is this, even a 40-second engine boost on a cruiser? And only a 20% buff? It feels like a 40% buff. Oh, yeah, definitely. I could see, that short of an engine boost on a cruiser, but it's not, And then, of course, with the Soviet damage con and stuff, obviously, you're hesitant to use that because you are a large cruiser. You have the battleship burn time and the battleship flood damage income as well, which, if you don't know, battleships take about double the amount of damage from floods than cruisers do. So you want to just hold on to all that, and it wound up being a very passive ship. Now, the guns were pretty well suited, and they are pretty well suited to that, because again, they're 15-inch guns. You have cruiser dispersion and not battle cruiser dispersion, so the grouping of the guns is very, very good, and they are very similar to the Siegfried's guns. The AP action is a little bit less than the Siegfried, however, you get better air drag coefficient, so the shells travel through the air much faster, which of course makes it easier to get those shells on target at range. So again, oddly enough, with how passive you kind of had to play the ship back in the day, it worked just fine. But, wasn't really an overly fun ship in my opinion. Yeah, if the enemy ships are being dumb and going broadside and you're just dumping on them with your 6 15-inch guns with cruiser dispersion, yeah, it's a good time. But you couldn't ever really do what a lot of large cruisers could do and, push and do a little bit of tanking, be that kind of hybrid battleship role. You couldn't ever really do it with the Sevastopol. However, all this time later, in update 13.1, so the beginning of the current patch cycle, if you will, the Sevastopol surprisingly got buffed kind of out of nowhere. They didn't touch this thing for almost 2 full patch cycles. That's yeah, that is a long time not to get buffed. Usually the devs will wait 2 or 3 months after a ship gets released to make any changes to it, But this time they waited again almost two full patch cycles. The ship was released in update 11.8, and she was buffed in update 13.1. So again, quite some time. What did they do to her? Well, you might have caught some of it already. So first off, they gave her a faster reload time, which that's nice. Her base reload time is now 24 seconds. I take the reload module because having guns this accurate with Soviet shell ballistics, coming out of the tubes at or under 20 seconds, depending upon, how much adrenaline rush you got going on, that's pretty dope, right? So I take the reload module. And then they adjusted the heal yet again. What is so funny is that they tried so many variations of this heal during testing, and now they've kind of gone back to the original one almost. So anyway, the heal now only runs for 60 seconds, but it still regenerates the same amount of HP. The cooldown time was reduced from 180 seconds to 120 seconds. So now it's right at 2 minutes. Before it was at 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So you had like a 3-minute cooldown time on your heal, which was absolutely no. Actually, it was a 3-minute cooldown time. Yeah, 180 seconds is 3 minutes. Duh, I'm not a math teacher. But anyway, so you had a 3-minute cooldown time on your heal, which was absolutely just atrocious. And they gave her an additional charge of that heal as well. So you get, a little bit more aggressiveness out of that heal now, since you don't have to wait 3 minutes for your heal to come back. 2 minutes, which is still fairly long, but, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive with the ship at that point now that you have that heal coming back that much, a whole full minute sooner. And with that, when I was taking her out to get some background footage for this video, she is definitely more comfortable at mid-range now. I feel more comfortable playing the ship a little bit closer to the action. So because of that, I'm having more fun with it. I'm doing a little bit better in it than I did beforehand. Beforehand, of course, too, the ship is totally capable of absolutely deleting most higher tier cruisers if it does catch your broadside. Because again, 6 accurate 15-inch shells finding their way to your citadel is a very, very fast way to go back to port. But now that, again, you can be a little more aggressive with it, you can actually push with it every now and then, especially, if you have the advantage. Because beforehand, think about that too beforehand, in 3 minutes. So many tier 10 ships can chew their way through your HP pool in 3 minutes. So even if you were in like a one-on-one situation with a, like a Hindenburg or, again, any like run-of-your-mill average tier 10 cruiser, in 3 minutes, just with the fires alone, they can very easily chew through your HP, especially, again, with your armor, because you have a 25mm bow. Pretty much every tier 10 cruiser can pin 25mm. So if they can just consistently hit your bow for 3 minutes, you're gonna go down, and that's just with the pin damage. You add the fire damage on top of that, and yeah, it's a ship that could very easily be bullied if it didn't have that heal up and ready to go. And again, remember too, with the old heal, you could very much just get bullied. So yeah. The buffs have definitely made her more comfortable to play. She is still for sure a very hefty investment because she is a Research Bureau ship. 58,000 Research Bureau points. That's quite a few line resets there, fellas. So is she worth getting now because they have, tweaked it to be a little bit more aggressive? You get a little bit more forgiveness there with the heal. You don't have to wait 3 minutes for it to come off a cooldown anymore. I wouldn't rush out to get it unless you enjoy the Siegfried. She's kind of a nice side grade to the Siegfried. A little bit less survivable Siegfried, but more of a, medium to longish range cruiser indeed. If you've got good aim, I would say definitely go for it eventually. Definitely not in like my top 5 Research Bureau ships at all, but if you like what you see in the background, you like Soviet ships, you can put Kuznetsov on him. You do get that free heal and that free damage con with Kuznetsov. So that is adding another layer of forgiveness onto the ship as well. Then, yeah, if you got enough research points laying around or none of the other Research Bureau ships interest you, I wouldn't advise against getting her anymore, but just know that even with the buffs, she's still a pretty peculiar ship overall, and one that you definitely are going to have to, play a couple rounds with in order to get a hang of it, because she really doesn't play like too many other, how many other 15-inch cruisers do we have in the game? We got the Sevastopol and we got the Siegfried, and again, Siegfried, you can be a little bit more cavalier and get in there at those, medium to close ranges, while the Sevastopol is more of a medium to long range version of that. But guys, it's my 2 cents on the Sevastopol after her buffs that happened like 6 months ago. But I just, was going through my port and I thought, oh, Sevastopol, I haven't played this thing in a minute. And then I was happily surprised to see that she had received some buffs. So there you go. But anyway, guys, again, this is my 2 cents on the Sevastopol. Let me know what you guys think about her in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.